Good afternoon, sports fans. Time for Razor on Xavier. That's Jim Reaker and Jeff Zink. Reaker and Zinker. Going to put that together for Razor, or you may know us as the Shrogs from the weekly show. In case those of you are just listening to the broadcast, I am a lifelong sports fan here in Cincinnati, Ohio, Xavier grad, and I'm here with a friend of mine who I started teaching with many, many years ago and is an even bigger Xavier fan than me, and that would be Jim Reaker. So, Jim, why don't you tell the folks about yourself?
Well, I grew up in Indiana and came to Cincinnati in 1984, Jeff. That's when we met. We were teaching across the hall from each other at New Richmond High School. I've been I'm a retired educator now, but I was in the business for 30 years, 12 as a teacher, mainly American history, 18 as a guidance counselor, also at New Richmond High School. When I came to Cincinnati, I started work on my master's at Xavier University in 1986. Got my master in guidance counseling, of course, and that was my first association with Xavier University. But from there, just started following the basketball team, kind of liked the whole direction of the program, a little school trying to make a big national scene, and have followed him for the last 30 years, actually been a season ticket holder for the last 20 years, and take every opportunity and chance to follow him around the country, turn vacations into going to see the Muskies play.
And we'll be talking about one of those a little later in the show. Jim just got back from the Tire Pro Invitational down in Florida, and he'll have plenty of things to tell you about that. But since this is our first broadcast, Jim, why don't we start off with something really simple, something I've labeled, something old, something new, something borrowed, and all things blue, which would be what's going on with this year's squad? Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the key returning players or the new recruiting class transfers, departing players? What have we got on this Xavier roster?
Well, I kind of think of them as the three musketeers, the three top players coming back that right now anyway for people to look forward to. Of course, two of them, Trayvon Blewett and Edmund Sumner, were first-team All-Big East preseason picks. Actually, Trayvon Blewett was part of the Big East first team from last season. Edmund Sumner was first team on the freshman team. They're going to bring the offensive power along with J.P. McCura. J.P. came off the bench a lot last year, or the last 2 years actually. This is his third season, his junior season. But between those three, I think most Xavier fans look for them to bring the offensive power. In fact, from last year, Trayvon averaged 15, Edmund 11, and J.P. McCura 9, but they have all upped their game in the first 5 games so far this year. Trayvon is averaging 18.6, Edmund 16.6, and J.P. McCura 17.6. So they have done exactly what most people have thought. They're bringing the offense for the Muskies. The losses are the big men underneath, really. Jalen Reynolds and James Farr kind of rotated a lot last year. Every once in a while they'd play at the same time, but they were responsible. Let's see, Jalen Reynolds actually averaged 6.5 rebounds a game, and James Farr 7.8, so that was about 14 rebounds a game that they lost from those two. And they averaged 9 and 10 points respectively, so that's 19 points that they lose from inside the big men. So those are the key losses, along with Remy Abel, who was an IU transfer, played there the last 2 years. He was known mainly for his defense. Usually he got the top offensive player from the other team, and actually usually did a very, very good of shutting them down. For our Xavier fans out there, if you don't know, Jalen Reynolds is now playing in Italy, and James Farr is playing professionally over in Hungary. So they're both over in Europe. Well, who's going to take those places? Well, a junior, Sean O'Mara, who's been on the team, 6'10", has progressed nicely through his years, although he was only getting about 7 minutes a game last year. Already the first 5 games this year, he's up that to about 17 minutes a game. Actually, one of his key performances was in a game that the rest of the team didn't play all that well against Missouri, the first game down in Florida. He actually had 13 points in that game. That was his high so far this year. But they look for him to develop and pick up a lot of those minutes underneath. The other two underneath guys, one of them is a transfer, that being Rasheed Gaston, who is 6'9". He came from Norfolk State. And at Norfolk State the last year he played, he averaged 15 points there and 9.6 rebounds. So he's expected to pick up a lot of the rebounding for the Musketeers also. The other big man so far that's been on the floor is a freshman named Tyreek Jones, actually one of my favorite players so far this year. Hasn't done a lot of scoring, but he's a rebounder and he plays good defense. And he's 6'9", 237, and he doesn't look like a freshman. He looks like he's been in the weight room a lot already. Also, another transfer, and this is one of those from the 5-year rule, or the rule where if you've graduated, you haven't used all 4 of your years of eligibility, you could transfer to another school. We've seen that a lot lately, and the Musketeers picked up a young man named Malcolm Bernard, who actually had played his last season at Florida A&M. He started out at Charles Southern, and then he took a year off, transferred to Florida A&M. But he came to Xavier, and that was just a pickup late in the summer. And actually it's been a nice pickup because he's got some length. He's a 6'6" guard. He could shoot a little bit, but again, he's kind of the defender. I look for him to maybe play the role that Remy Abel did, being taken on the top offensive player of the other team, especially if it's a guard-type player. And then the other freshman coming in this year is Quentin Gooden. And again, very physical young man, 6'4", 194 pounds. And again, he doesn't look like a freshman. Sometimes freshmen come in and they're kind of skinny, and they need to spend a year in the weight room at the college level in order to play with that physicality of the college game. But he actually comes to us from Kentucky. He played at Taylor County High School, which is in Campbellsville, Kentucky, averaged about 23 points a game. And he was actually had many, many awards as the top player in the entire state of Kentucky. So that's kind of a rundown of where we are right now. Of course, the Musketeers are missing a couple players that probably will be back sometime during the season. First of all, you have Kaiser Gates, who contributed a lot last year as a freshman, got a few minutes, but a lot of people were thinking that he might be a starter playing the number 4 position this year. But he had some minor knee surgery about a month ago. He did warm up and dress for the last game down in Florida, so we're looking for him to probably rejoin the team, maybe see a few minutes, I would say at least before Christmas, if not sooner. And then, of course, the other case is Miles Davis, the senior, who has been a leader of this team, had some legal difficulties, and is currently under a suspension from Chris Mack. His legal difficulties were settled about a week ago, but there's not much inside word coming when he might be back. Some people say maybe after the first semester's over, maybe when the second semester starts. But again, there's not much coming out of the Xavier camp on when he'll be back, but we do expect him to probably be back sometime when he serves his penalty and Chris Mack is satisfied that he's ready to be back on the team.
Yeah, good rundown there. Of course, we got the two other freshmen, Leighton Strand and Connor Peterson, who are going to wrap up what was ranked by many in a top 20 recruiting class from last year. Of course, the Musketeers play in the always tough Big East. So shifting from the Xavier roster, why don't we go over there, Jim, since this is also one of the conferences you cover in our Trogcast. Why don't you sort of give us a rundown of what the Musketeers have to face this year in Big East competition?
Well, overwhelming choice for number 1 in the Big East, of course, as most people know who follow any college basketball at all, is Villanova, of course, the defending national champion, and they were the unanimous choice to finish first again in the Big East. The only vote they did not receive in that was from themselves, which they're not allowed to vote for themselves. So they were a unanimous choice to be the champion again. They bring back 3 top players, Josh Hart, who was player of the year, Chris Jenkins, and Jalen Bronson. Of course, they lost Ryan Archidiacono. I don't have to say that again this year, who I thought was the heart and soul of that team. He was the one that, when it came down to crunch time, usually pulled them out with big plays, either big steals on defense or big buckets underneath or driving the basket. He was very good at that. And they lost him, and, of course, they lost the big boy, Daniel Oshefu, underneath. But, again, they're expected to be very, very good. In fact, they're ranked number 2 in the country right now. The next team that I think will be at the top is a team that finished about 500 last year, but has almost everybody back and have a top player in Maurice Watson. That's the Creighton Blue Jays. And, in fact, I was just looking, Creighton has already defeated Wisconsin, Washington State, North Carolina State, and Ole Miss. All of those teams, of course, in some of the Power 5 conferences. So they're off to a great start. And so I look for a good showing from them this year, especially it's tough. They're out in Omaha, Nebraska. So for almost everyone else out of the Big East, they got to make that long trip out to Omaha, and they have a brand new facility there. I believe it's an on-campus facility, and they pack it every time. Great fans out there in Omaha, Nebraska. So I look for the Creighton Blue Jays to give everybody a tussle this year. Otherwise, Butler has major losses in Roosevelt Jones and Kellen Dunham. They did win a game against Northwestern with a buzzer beater the other night in the Big East Big Ten Challenge, and they're usually pretty tough. Team that's kind of gotten off to a tough start is Georgetown. Now, they've had some tough games. I think they played Wisconsin the other night. They lost a tough game to Maryland about a week ago. Not quite sure where they are. They had a major loss in Devontae Smith-Rivera. He, again, was their leader, kind of the man they went to in the crunch.
The other day by beating an Oregon squad. So who knows what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, I think that you might see them up and down all year, but it's hard to say. Marquette, they got a lot back, although they lost Henry Ellenson, their one-and-doneer, who went to the NBA. Providence, who had a good season last year. They lost 2 to the NBA, and Chris Dunn and Ben Bentel. And Seton Hall lost Isaiah Whitehead. So those teams there, it's kind of wait and see. They all lost major contributors, so how do they react to their newcomers will be the question. And then St. John's, who I believe almost every player on their team last year was a freshman. They had a lot of international players. And they have a man that supposedly you're going to hear a lot about, Shamori Pons. He was voted the preseason freshman of the year. He's from Brooklyn, so right there in New York. And a lot of people look for him with some of the experienced players that got a year under their belt last year to help the Johnnies to maybe move up the standings a little bit and be a tough out. So that's just kind of a quick overhaul of the Big East.
Well, and several of those, of course, Xavier, Butler, Providence, Seton Hall all went to the tournament last year. And, of course, Villanova won it all. So Andy Katz even came on one of his videos today saying that he thinks there are going to be at least 5 teams from the Big East in the tournament this year at least. So a lot of things.
Considering there's 10 teams and you got 50% of your teams going to the Big East, that's a pretty high percentage. And, in fact, I think 2 other ones went to other postseason tournaments. So 7 out of the 10 teams actually played beyond the conference tournament last year. So the Big East has done very well since they've transitioned into, this is the 4th year of what you might call the Big East or the new Big East, when all the big shakeup took, when, some of the traditional Big East teams that you talked about in our other broadcast, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Boston College, and those all kind of left for the Power 5 college or conferences. And, of course, a lot of that had to do with their football programs, the reasons why those decisions were made. But Villanova has won it all 3 years so far in the new Big East or the reorganized Big East.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get back to the Muskies now. They're 5 games in. They've got another game coming up this Saturday. They are 5-0. They started off the year at number 7. It depends on who you're looking at now. ESPN's got them at number 8. The AP poll's got them at number 9. But some people are wondering a little bit. They had a couple tighter games than they thought. So what's your analysis of these first 5 games? And I know you've gotten to see just about all of them in person.
Yes, I have seen all 5 games, the Lehigh game and the Buffalo game, which were played at the Cintas Center. And then I did see all 3 of their games down in the Tire Pro Invitational in Orlando. I believe on the negative side, I think the defense didn't play very well in the first 3 games. And if you know anything about Chris Mack, he stresses defense. And, in fact, if you don't play defense, you're probably not going to find your way on the floor. That's how you get your playing time, is if you play defense. They Now the Lehigh team, they're expected to win their league, the Patriot League, and they actually, their center, who was 6'10" and very athletic, they believe will be his third year as Player of the Year. So he was a tough one for him to guard. In fact, I believe he had 20-plus points in that game. And part of that, again, you know, the new players, the new role players for the Musketeers are the big men under the basket. So I think he kind of took advantage of them that night, and they weren't quite ready to play at that level. But, again, they won that game. The Buffalo game was really ugly. In fact, there were about 60 fouls called. That was one of those games where it was just like, you know, can you put the whistles away for a while, just let them play a little bit. But we know early in the season a lot of times referees like to make points of certain things, certain fouls, new emphasis that have come down to them. So that was kind of an ugly game. I'm not even quite sure. I believe the Musketeers won that by double digits, close to 20 points. And then the Missouri game was kind of troubling. They scored some points, but they didn't play very good defense. And that game actually went into overtime. But, again, they did pull it out. And then I thought the last two games, starting with Clemson, a very, very athletically gifted team, and then the game against Northern Iowa, a very, very good shooting team. In fact, I was really worried about the Northern Iowa team. Had seen them play two games previous. They come back from an 18-point deficit to beat Oklahoma, and they were just very good shooters. I mean, all of them can shoot, and most of them had grown up in Iowa. And if you know anything about Iowa high school basketball, it's a lot like Indiana and Kentucky. That it's probably the most important sport in the state. I was concerned, but they played very good defense against them, and were able to win that game. So I see the defense coming together, and again, I think a lot of it's the new pieces learning to play with each other, the new players learning to play with each other.
So it's sort of a lack of synergy in melding in the new people and missing old people and missing Gates and Davis, but they got some good players out there. They just got to bring it together. Huh? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. They're playing Northern Iowa again this weekend, and that's going to be a kind of a good. I think, exercise for them, because the Big East is one of the few conferences in the country where everybody plays everybody twice. You play everybody home and away. Not all the conferences do that. They have kind of a split schedule where sometimes they don't even play certain schools in certain years.
Well, that has to do with their different divisions and champions and the Big 14/10. Or it'd be impossible for you to play everybody twice. So you play everybody in your division twice, but only some of the ones in the other division. Yeah.
But I think it'll be a good exercise for them to have to play a team that they've seen already and have seen them, and see what adjustments they make based on the first competition with them. And it's only a week turnaround, which, of course, probably in the regular season you're going to have more like a 2 to 3 week turnaround. Although for both of them, I think both of them had the entire week off to rest and prepare for each other. So it'll be an interesting game on Saturday.
Well, the one thing that I've noticed, and you might want to comment on, usually Chris Spangler State defense, but also from the free throw line. And they're not shooting poorly, but they seem to be having just a bit of an issue down the stretch. I mean, against Missouri, they had an off night. They only made about 66% of the free throws, and guys on the pavement like me, getting 2 out of 3 would be great, but considering that their next lowest total was about 74. But they just seem to be having a little bit of a problem with those pressure free throws down the stretch. Have you seen anything in what they're doing? Like in the Northern Iowa game, they only made 2 of the last 5, with one of them being a one-on-one, so they wouldn't have even gotten another shot.
Yeah, I think I actually looked. I think they're shooting about 73% right now, which, again, isn't terrible. I think you make the point, though, what has made it come out or seem obvious is it's been at key times at the end of games when they really needed to make free throws that they've missed some big free throws. One example was when Edmund Sumner was fouled with 0.3 seconds left in overtime against Missouri, and he had 2 shots because they were in the bonus, and he missed the first one. He did get the second one, too. So I think, you look at a championship team, I believe, most championship teams that are going to contend for their league championships and maybe make a run you're going to look. You want them to be shooting maybe about 80% as a team, and of course you usually want to have a couple who shoot in the 90%. The ones you can go to. That you want the ball in their hands at the end of a big game when they're going to get fouled and they're going to need to make free throws. That may be one of the biggest losses of Miles Davis right now. Miles Davis, I believe, probably led him in free throw percentage last year.
Yeah.
And in fact, he was one of the guys always on the floor at the end of the game. But I think that's something that is easy to fix. I know they missed a lot during the Lehigh game, and I think the next week Chris Mack had them all in the gym at 8 a.m. shooting 100 free throws to kind of make a point that they needed to improve on that. But I've heard him be asked about it a couple times, and he's kind of said, I don't really think it's a problem at this juncture. So
that's good. Well, the next couple of weeks will tell. Like I said, they got Northern Iowa on Saturday, followed by North Dakota State next week. But then they'll come up against a tough Baylor team. In fact, they're going to get some of those Big Five things. A tough Baylor team, followed by Colorado and Utah and Wake Forest, and then by a couple days after Christmas they'll be starting the Big East schedule. But we'll talk about those things in programs to come. Well, you just had a fun. Go ahead.
Just a quick note on that. If you look at their schedule, there are no real easy outs for them. That Baylor team, I don't know if you've been watching today, but they just put a hammering on Michigan State, and they'll be playing probably Louisville. I don't know how that game turned out. Don't even know if it's over yet. Louisville was playing Wichita State.
They'll be. They're up 10 in the second quarter with about 4 minutes left.
Okay, so they got to go to Baylor next weekend. That is going to be a tough challenge. Baylor's ranked number 20 in the country, and if they happen to win that Atlantis Bahamas tournament, I think they'll probably jump close to the top 10. Then that game out of Colorado, Colorado out of the Pac-10, but here's going to be the challenge there. That's a middle-of-the-week game, a long trip, and I saw the tip time was 9 p.m., and I believe that's Mountain Time, which may mean it's 11 o'clock for Eastern Time, their body. So that's going to be a tough challenge for them, too. And then they got Utah from the Pac-10 coming back and Wake Forest from the ACC. This may be the most challenging out-of-conference schedule that the Musketeers have maybe ever had.
We'll have more on that as we have one in a further week. Well, we want to leave time, Jim, for you to tell us a little bit about your adventures down in Orlando. It seems like you had a great time going down there, watching Xavier games and a few other things. Why don't you give us a few of the highlights from your time at the Tire Pros Invitational?
Well, again, the reason it was played in Orlando, originally this tournament is the Puerto Rican tip-offs, what it's called. But because of the Zika virus, the officials had decided to move it to Orlando. And so there really wasn't a lot of people there. In fact, I was talking to a gentleman from the Orlando area, big basketball fan, and he likes to go to the other tournament that they just started today there. He said they really didn't even publicize it very much. So there wasn't a lot of people there. But for a fan like myself, that was great. I sat in the second or third row for almost every game. You got an up-close feel. You got to hear what Coach Mack was saying. You got to hear some of the interaction between the players. I actually sat, I think I told you, I sat next to the parents of some of the players during some of the games, which is kind of neat just to, see their point of view they have watching their kids play and how they react to when they do well or not so well. It was just a neat experience there to get so close to the action. At the Cintas Center, I do sit in the front row, but it's of the upper arena. So I'm not usually that close to the action.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you love basketball, again, I grew up in Indiana, so I've watched millions of basketball games, and if you love basketball, it's just, and in fact, I saw I think 10 of the 12 games in their entirety. I did leave one game early. I think the Oklahoma Tulane game, the end of the first day, Oklahoma was ahead by about 20 points with about 5 minutes left. So I got an early exit there. And then the second day, I didn't come back in for the second session of one of the consolation games till about 10 minutes after they had started. So, because it is a lot of basketball to watch in 3 days. But again, I really enjoyed it. You get to see a lot of different styles. Got to see a lot of different. The other thing, I sat behind the Arizona State bench one game. Got to listen to Bobby Hurley coach. That was really entertaining, shall I say, his style and demeanor and the way he coached his players. And actually, the famous Bobby Hurley Sr. was there actually too, watching his son coach. He's of course of the St. Anthony High School out in Jersey City fame, and he still coaches there. So he must have just been taking a couple days off to watch his son's team play. And of course, the ever famous Bill Murray, of course, who is the father of one of the Xavier assistant coaches, Luke Murray. He was there. So it was kind of nice, fun to be around, people you see on TV all the time. Sat behind LaFonso Ellis a couple games and watched him do the ESPN broadcast. So I just had a lot of fun. Of course, the weather was great down there. So I'm hoping to go next year. Next year they'll be in Las Vegas. So I've already started working on my wife that maybe we can make a trip to Las Vegas next year and watch the Musketeers play out there.
I think Ms. Reaker might be a little more interested in the year after that when they go to Hawaii, but you might be able to talk her into Las Vegas, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and for the Xavier fans, next year it is Las Vegas, and then they're in the Maui Classic in 18, and then I just saw it was just announced in 19 they'll be back at the Battle for Atlantis down in the Bahamas. Probably won't have much trouble convincing her to go there either.
Well, we're going to wrap it up here. We're just looking at the page. Coach Mack sent out a tweet about an hour ago. His top 5 for Thanksgiving in order: 1 stuffing, 2 family, 3 friends, 4 turkey, 5 gravy. He says, now resume eating and be thankful for your blessings. And we're thankful to be here on Thanksgiving, and we will set up another Razor on Xavier broadcast for sometime next week. And in the meantime, look for us on the Trogcast, which deals with overall men's basketball, NCAA. Any final thoughts, Jim, before we sign off?
No, Jeff, just want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and happy Thanksgiving to all the Xavier fans. And hopefully if you like this broadcast, we'd like to thank Mike Goodpasture. He's the one that got us involved in this and gave us this opportunity. Thank him. But tell your Xavier friends to tune in and listen to what we have to talk about.
And if you're listening, required Thanksgiving viewing, WKRP in Cincinnati's Turkey Day, the famous WKRP turkey giveaway. We won't, if you've never seen it, it's older than most of our listeners, but check it out on YouTube. You'll get a good chuckle out of 20 minutes. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you soon. And let's end with what we end with, Jim. Go Muskies.
Muskies. Out.